Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and today I want to talk about what's going on with all the missing games and announcements we expected to see during the Nintendo Direct that just happened just a couple days ago. As this recording happened on September 13th, I'm recording this on September 16th. There's a number of things that we thought would be there that were not there. For example, Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp. This game has been delayed twice. It was supposed to come out back in December of 2021, was then delayed to, I want to say, April, but then was delayed again due to the war in Ukraine. And we thought we would see it during this Direct and would get dated and would come out maybe early next year. No mention of that game. There's also been the widely rumored Twilight Princess and Waker HD that have been said to be real, that do exist, are planned for Switch at some point or another by a number of different insiders. Emily Rogers, Nate the Hate, Andy Robinson, Jeff Grubb, even Mike Minotti, someone else who shares a podcast with Jeff Grubb, Last of the Nintendogs. And the reason we thought so confidently it would be happening this time around is because he thought so confidently that it would be happening this time around. Yet they did not. What's going on with those? And then also Metroid Prime HD. Said by Jeff Grubb to be coming this holiday. He's willing to shave off his head if it does not happen. And we didn't see that either. Nor did we see Metroid Prime 4 as something we would see come alongside of it. But then on top of all of that, during the Direct, when we got the announcement for Pikmin 4, which is a very exciting thing that we will be talking about in the not so distant future, Miyamoto talked about the Mario movie and didn't really say anything of it, just pretty much just mentioned it and that it's coming out in spring, double downing on the fact that it's due out this April, as we've seen from the release date. It's still slated for spring. Maybe there's a minor delay there, but it's still going to be in that spring timing, as he just said. Maybe it's not delayed at all. Yet they still didn't show off this movie. Where is it? Well, we're going to talk about all of this today. What's going on with these games, this Mario movie, why weren't they at the Direct, what makes sense here, that's what we're getting into. Now before we jump into things, let me first very briefly mention my social media. You will see a few different things here on screen. Check that all out, it's linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, you can subscribe or perhaps consider joining as a member. So I figured this would be a good idea to talk about now, because I do eventually want to get to talking about Pikmin 4, or maybe even Fire Emblem Engage, and absolutely 100% The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. We already put out our initial trailer analysis back on Wednesday. But I want to talk about the games that we thought would be there that haven't been there for a couple reasons. One, because there is that mystery, that question, why weren't they there, what's going on, but also to take the L. When I say take the L, I mean accept that I was wrong on a few things. Now, to be totally clear, I did not report a thing, right? I simply predicted that we would see those things, and I said why I would predict them, in part because of the insiders that I chose to trust, but also because I thought they made sense. Now, obviously, in hindsight, not all of that has come true. Some predictions did come true. I did predict that GoldenEye would be announced at the Direct. I was right about that. We did also predict that Tears of the Kingdom would be revealed with a trailer and a name drop, and very good chance of a release date. We got all that, but it's coming out May, not March, as I thought it would. But another thing, even though I thought we would get a trailer, the trailer I thought we would get would be longer than what we got, just 90 seconds, which is definitely weird, but we'll talk about that another time. Point is, we got some things right, but we also thought we would see Metroid Prime HD and Twilight Princess and Waker HD and Advance Wars. None of those showed up. I was fairly confident we would get a Mario movie trailer. The movie was mentioned, but we didn't learn anything about it. Nothing. What's going on here? Let's dive into it. So firstly, let's focus on Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp. This game has been delayed twice. We don't know what's coming out. It's literally has been delayed indefinitely. We don't know when it's coming out. And to me, this is a little unfortunate because, well, I thought I want this game to come out and succeed, but it's taking so long to finally release. Maybe it's going to lose whatever wind it had behind its sail, and it won't perform well once it finally comes out. I guess you could even argue that at this point, that ship has already sailed, to kind of keep with that theming there. However, you could also argue that coming out with the game now wouldn't be the right time. And maybe even it's the case that if Nintendo were to announce this game during this Direct and have it released early next year, sometime early next year, it wouldn't have been a good fit. Considering what Nintendo put out for January and February, Fire Emblem in January, which is incredible, Octopath Traveler and this other Kirby game remaster deluxe version coming out in February as well, that it probably would not have been a great idea to release Advance Wars at that point. So maybe they're coming at it from a perspective of they also want this game to succeed. They want this game to come out in a situation where there aren't too many other big Nintendo games where Nintendo fans will pick those over Advance Wars. So maybe they're waiting for the right time to do it, and they just didn't think this was the right time. But there's a little bit more I have to add on this, because apparently Steven Totillo went out and reached out to Nintendo. This is what he said on Twitter. I asked Nintendo if Advance Wars 1 and 2 has been cancelled, given the lack of news about it since it was delayed due to the invasion of Ukraine. Nintendo reps reply, the release has been delayed. We will announce the new date once it has been determined. So this shouldn't be shocking information, but the clarity it offers here is that at this point, officially speaking, Advance Wars has not been cancelled. So that's great news. Also, it would be very strange if it was cancelled, because the game is completed. It's entirely done. It's a quality game that's just ready to be played. It just hasn't been released yet, and it's because of the war in Ukraine. So it also could be the case until maybe waiting until things settle down there, but I don't know how long that's going to be. For most of us probably don't. So I think at some point or another, they're gonna have to just release it, right? Yes, to some extent, I think it was very sensible of them to delay things at the time when it was gonna initially release once all the news broke out of that war. But at some point or another, they do gotta come out with this game. And I think at this point, my belief, I don't know, but my belief is simply based on what they have coming right now and what they expect from Advance Wars, they're simply waiting a little bit longer until they reveal this game, until they give us a new release date. So I think there's a solid chance we could see it show up in the next Direct. Maybe there's an opportunity to release it sometime next year, and it'll be a very quick turnaround in terms of announcement of the new release date to release. But now let's move on to Metroid. So something interesting that came out from Direct Feed Games, also known as Nate the Hate, was this on Twitter. After Tropical Freeze release, Retro started work on a new IP that was cancelled. The company then started work on Metroid Prime for the Switch, work finished on Prime Remaster in mid-2021, now busy on Metroid Prime 4. So this is in response to Spawnwave sort of just bringing up the question of the existence of Metroid Prime Remaster. So I think some people are debating the existence of Metroid Prime Remaster. And here Direct Feed Games is double downing on its existence. Jeff Grubb doesn't deny its existence, Emily Rogers does not deny its existence, and other people have suggested things that it does exist. I personally haven't been told anything, but I also don't have a lot of inside sources, so, you know, I don't want to pretend like I do. It's a very, 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 very occasional thing. Point is, a lot of reputable people still say it exists. Now, I understand some of you may think, are they really that reputable? They just told us we would get Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD, and they're not coming. And that's certainly worth noting here, for sure. I definitely, I think that it's something that needs to be addressed, right? And they did personally address it on their own show, Mike Minotti and Jeff Grubb. I personally trust them, but I think something that needs to be stressed here, and it is something that we definitely lose sight on sometimes when we get really excited about what's to come, but it's just that even when we are getting information from industry insiders that are in on the loop on things, for sure, that doesn't mean exactly what they've been told is exactly what's going to happen. When we're learning about things that haven't been officially confirmed yet, they are more subject to change than something that's officially been announced, and even when things have officially been announced, they still get delayed. Look at Advance Wars, delayed twice. Look at Breath of the Wild 2 that we now know as Tears of the Kingdom, delayed I think twice, right? Or at least once. Point is, plans change. And if they haven't even been announced yet, they are even more likely to change. And take a look at what happened with Pikmin 4. Just announced. Miyamoto himself told us this game was nearing completion back in 2015. Not starting, nearing completion. I think what happened is they completely scrapped development and restarted again later on. And now we are getting a legitimate Pikmin 4 for Switch next year. But this is important to take into consideration because when it comes to projects that have not officially been announced yet, we don't know what's going to happen. Remember Skyward Sword HD? Eiji Aonuma, the Zelda director or producer, he's changed roles over the last few years, but he has told us about Skyward Sword HD, and it didn't come until years later, when people no longer thought it would happen. So I think what's important to take into consideration here is Nintendo sits on games for long amounts of time, and they come out with it when they want to come out with it, and sometimes they have a plan, and then they change it, and then they change it again, and then they change it again. So when it comes to speaking on information from behind the scenes before it's been officially announced, it's very hard to predict. It's very, very hard. That all said, most of these people did tell us there would be a direct. I expected this, a lot of us did, because there's always a September direct. But there were some things that turned out to be true. For example, we were told about It Takes Two coming to Switch, and that was announced for Switch. So it's not like there isn't any information that has been proven true as of late. Another one, Fire Emblem Engage. We were told about a big Fire Emblem game coming, and here it is. I didn't think it would be coming out as soon as this January. We did talk about it having a high likelihood of being at the direct. They didn't specifically predict it, but definitely it had a good chance, and because it's coming in January, Nintendo announced it. So the main point I'm making here is that just because it wasn't announced yet doesn't mean it's not happening. However, I think the premise of Metroid Prime Remaster coming out this holiday is now very unlikely. Do I want it? Oh yes. Am I secretly hoping? Not even secretly, obviously, but am I hoping that somehow, some way Nintendo does a weird Nintendo thing and just gives us a curveball Twitter announcement next week or the week after for this game to come out sometime November or December? You bet I am. But I think that's probably not going to happen. But I'll say this though. March is, interestingly, a vacant month. And typically Nintendo likes to have pretty solid games to come out to close the fiscal year. And yet, Tears of the Kingdom, what we used to call Breath of the Wild 2, probably the biggest game we know about that's coming from Nintendo, is not coming out in March, but 6 weeks later in May. So maybe Nintendo has something else for March. Maybe it is Metroid Prime Remaster. Supposedly, it looks pretty good, and it's a big deal, because it's been in development. It had actually a few years of development time here. But something else to consider about Metroid Prime Remaster is what it suggests about Prime 4, another game that we thought we might see in the Direct. And really, if Metroid Prime Remaster is not about to come out, Nintendo's not going to talk about Metroid Prime 4. They probably come alongside of each other. And it's also possible it could work both ways. Maybe if Nintendo's not ready to talk about Metroid Prime 4, they don't want to show us Metroid Prime Remaster. One thing to consider here is that maybe Metroid Prime 4 isn't going to be coming out next holiday. If it's not going to be coming out next holiday, perhaps Nintendo doesn't want to release this nice brand new Metroid Prime Remaster that may even appear as a remake for many people this holiday. Maybe they want to come out sooner to release for Prime 4. So that could be why we haven't seen Prime Remaster yet. Maybe it was slated for this holiday internally by Nintendo, but then they spoke with Retro Studios and saw that Prime 4 probably wasn't going to make it out for holiday 2023, so they're sitting on it, waiting until it's the right time to really ramp up that hype cycle, that advertising cycle for Metroid Prime 4, and they're going to lead it off with this Metroid Prime Remaster. So that could be why. Maybe they think Metroid Prime 4 could hit the close of fiscal year 2024, and maybe that's when we'll see Metroid Prime Remaster. Well, when I say that, I mean March 2023. Maybe it's announced in an earlier Nintendo Direct, maybe it's announced at the Game Awards. So we may not be that far off from an announcement. It's possible, but I think most likely it's not coming out this year. I think that boat has sailed, but of course, I would love to be wrong because I've been waiting for this game for some time. But let's now move on to Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. I feel all the things we discussed beforehand kind of apply to these as well. Now, what Mike Minotti said, the person who was convinced that they would be in this Direct, from what I heard, he may have said something else recently that I missed, and if he did, feel free to point out in the comments below. But I saw the podcast, their direct response to the Direct, and basically, they had a news source, and they thought it was good, and they were a little misled, and they were not entirely confident about this, but, you know, the hype just got the better of them this time, as it does for most of us, and they were more convinced than they should have. It's not that they were lying or anything like that. They had a source, they trusted it more than they should have. And it's that simple. It's just that simple. Now, this game or these games have been told to have been real by a number of sources from a number of insiders for some time now. Nintendo's sitting on them. When are they coming out? I don't know. That's kind of a weird, peculiar thing here, especially with the Tears of the Kingdom coming out May, not even March. There's a bit more of a window there. There's a vacancy somewhere where they could probably release these games, yet they haven't. Why? What's going on there? Tough to say, really. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why they're not coming out with them. They like to have a Zelda release every calendar year, and it seems like they're skipping. I think the boat has sailed for Twilight Princess and Waker HD as well. I went out on a limb and said they could come out in just a few weeks. It would be a 3D All-Star situation, but that, at this point, seems pretty wrong. Could they come out early next year? I guess. But how close to the release of Tears of the Kingdom do you really want them to come out? I think at this point, they may just be saving them for a release in another year where they don't have a big new Zelda release to come out. They may have thought, well, you know, Tears of the Kingdom is coming out May. That's really not too far off from this current calendar year. A year and a half between Zelda games is not that big of a deal. So maybe that's what they're thinking. And that's why we're not getting Twilight Princess Waker HD, because they have plenty of games that are coming out already. They don't need them right now. And perhaps simply the hype of Tears of the Kingdom will be enough Zelda service, fan service, keeping that Zelda brand healthy until that game actually releases. We'll live on that for quite some time, and then they'll move on to the next Zelda project after that. Again, would I love to be wrong here? Would I love to see Twilight Princess and Waker HD just available on the eShop? You bet I would. But at this point, it just doesn't seem likely. But they will happen eventually. If it's not on Switch, Switch 2, they're real, I believe it, they're coming. It's really just a matter of time. The same way we waited years for Pikmin 4, the same way we waited years for Skyward Sword HD, 2D Metroid, all these things that were rumored that proved to be true, they came. Look how long we waited for Breath of the Wild 2 just to get an actual title. The longest wait between two major Zelda games ever. Sometimes these things take a while, but games are coming. We got a whole bunch of cool announcements during this direct. Pikmin 4, Fire Emblem Engage, there's some cool things. So, it's not like we don't have games to play. We absolutely do. Oh wait, there's still something we need to talk about. And that's the Mario movie. The Mario movie, I thought we would get a trailer at this direct because last September Nintendo Direct they revealed the voice actors. They did mention the movie here. They did reconfirm that it's still slated for spring, so it's not like it's getting delayed. But they gave us no actual new details. Why? We're about a half year away at this point. Why? And I think they're just waiting for the proper venue to show it off, and maybe they thought a direct isn't actually the right time. Maybe last year, when it just came down to details like the voice actors, they thought that would be fun. But now that they're approaching the actual release date, maybe they thought the right place to show off an actual trailer would be a bigger place that would send bigger waves that would hit a larger audience. So one event comes to mind, the Game Awards. Maybe we get no other game news at the Game Awards, but if there's one thing from Nintendo that I think makes more sense than any other, it's a Mario movie trailer at the Game Awards. I think that's maybe why we didn't get at the Direct. There might be some deal in place between Nintendo and the Game Awards to have this show up there. That's gonna be probably the best way to show off a movie trailer, a game movie trailer, Mario movie. I think that's probably why. If it's not at the Game Awards, then I don't know what to tell you. Nintendo is just weird, and they just do things in ways that it's so hard to understand. Or it's just getting delayed, but Miyamoto told us it's still slated for spring, so, you know, not sure what's going on with that. It's probably not delayed if he's told us that. So we'll see. Anyways, guys, I'm curious what you guys think on all these things that were missing from the Direct. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, but that's all for now. This is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching. I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.